the ethos right now is just, loud and, tube amps and, riffs and grooves and all that. But yeah, I don't know. The scene is really diverse, and it's just really awesome to see so many different, like styles of musicians coming together and just supporting one another, because we all have the same goals in mind. And it's the community is everything.
Liam of Tumble, thank you so much for your time today. We are inching closer and closer to that May 2nd, debut EP release date. Lost in Light is coming soon, or soon-ish at this point. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Getting there.
Couple of years in the making. So how excited are you to have that very first actual real product out there?
Oh man, yeah, it's super exciting. It's the first time I've ever been on vinyl, so it's a big moment for me. And yeah, a couple of years in the making, more or less. So really nice to just finally have them in hand. We got the records, and yeah, they look awesome, and yeah, we're all really stoked.
Yeah, I bet. Now, you guys are easily described, in the Toronto rock scene as like, one of the hottest new bands and all that kind of stuff. And there's been great reaction to the stuff you've put out already. Obviously, I've already had a chance to listen to the full product. Has that come with some unwanted pressure at the same time? And I know that you're probably like just enjoying the ride, like, a couple of years in, and people are liking what you're doing and people are excited. But do you also feel that in a way that it's like, oh, more people are paying attention than I might have thought a couple of years ago? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, the more the merrier, we're just really happy that people are digging what we're doing and coming to the shows and just supporting the music. And I always put pressure on myself, and I think we all put a little bit of pressure on ourselves, to show up and play our best and, perform and give the crowd what they came for. But it's, the bigger the crowd, the better, and we're loving the attention for sure. Wouldn't lie about that.
Yeah, I've seen you play already, and you were opening for other bands, and most of the people that I was meeting there all told me they were there to see you guys. So there is definitely buzz being created in the local scene. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure that will spill over to the broader North American scene. Let's go into the music. You guys are, and I say this with love, but you are unashamedly, idolizing the late 60s, early 70s. That's pretty clear. We get very early Purple influences, some Sir Lord Baltimore is in there as well, War Pig, Blue Cheer, all that kind of good stuff. How do you and the other guys roll into that? Because let's be honest, unless you look extremely good for your age, I have a sneaking suspicion you weren't around necessarily when that stuff was happening for the first time.
No.
So is it as simple as, hey, that's what my parents were playing as I was growing up, or did you have to kind of go on a journey to get to that music?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a journey for sure. Like it's kind of where my tastes arrived. But I grew up listening to lots of rock and roll, and then as I grew older, and like I'm still pretty young, but just using the internet, using YouTube to just go on these deep dives, crazy bands, and you find yourself going down those rabbit holes. And I just at some point in my life when I was just really getting into jamming and playing loud with friends and stuff like that, it just sort of coincided with that first Black Sabbath record, and then like finding Blue Cheer, and it just kind of snowballed into just like doing these deeper dives into all these great bands from the late 60s, early 70s that nobody's really heard of. I just think it was such a potent time for heavy rock, and there was just so many bands living in the shadows of Deep Purple and Sabbath
for
and
sure.
Cheer,
everything,
and So I still discover bands, that blow my mind from way back then, but it's just, yeah, it's just groove and power and kind of just has everything that I like and, you know, everything that Tumble strives to be. So yeah, it's got style, that we love. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. Your album looks good. Absolutely. I love the design. I need to grab my hands on one of your release tour posters because that came together nicely as well.
thank you.
Have to add it to my collection. Off screen is my Ian Blurton poster of the show that you opened for him. Um, but it also sounds really good, especially for fans of the genre. And how hard is it? Because I mean, I'm a music fan. I'm not an audiophile by any means, but a lot of those now we kind of like romanticize the sound of a lot of these old school records, and those old school records were often kind of like a compromise to what budget and technology allowed for at the time. And I'm sure many of the bands in those days were like, "Oh, if only we could have a quote unquote good or better production." But now we're like, "Oh, it sounds good and whatever."
Yeah.
How hard is it now, kind of like backwards engineering with all the stuff we have available to kind of find the right magic again? Like you have to strip down a lot of stuff that is now commonplace in a
Right.
recording studio, right? So how was that a difficult exercise to get to the right sound?
Well, you mentioned Ian, right? Ian Blurton, like he was the wizard behind the board,
Yeah.
and he like co-produced the whole record, and he made it really easy. Like he knew what we were going for, and it didn't feel like, reverse engineering, but it is kind of funny how, those records from back then, they probably would have killed for the technology we have now.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
kept everything pretty, like we took an old school approach, we recorded everything live off the floor as a band in one room, and then just overdubbed, the vocals and extra guitars, that we needed to, but we kept it pretty minimal with the overdubs and just, like stuck with just loud tube amps and,
Yeah.
analog recording. Of course there's digital elements, but it's all there, and the approach is pretty much, that sort of traditional approach.
Yeah. It also allows you to stay super close to that sound when you're playing your show. Like, people come to see you, they
That's
get
right.
the full thing without you guys having to rely too much on stage magic and stuff like
Totally,
that.
totally,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the improvisational quality that we have, it was important that we were able to kind of translate that, and sound like us when we got in the studio. So yeah, that recording live like that and just sort of improvising all those solos, that was the approach we took, and I think it just came out sounding great. And that, again, that's hugely thanks to Ian. We're getting recorded at Pro Gold, and having him there at the steering the wheel was great.
Yeah. Is there one particular thing that you kind of took from him, that you learned from him in this process, that is something that you will always go back to from now on?
Mm. I mean, I learned a lot. Like it's hard to put my finger on one thing. Just so many tips on singing, and yeah, just like the whole process, kind of just getting to sit behind him in his chair and watch how he works, and the approach to yeah, just layering guitars or vocals and
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So they're like, yeah. And I mean, I've learned so much just watching him play live too,
For sure.
sharing the stage with Ian is always a blessing. And I always learn from that man.
The music itself is, within the confounds of, if we will, of like, let's call it retro rock maybe, or what have you, but within those confines it's still very diverse. And I'll use that a little bit as a segue to the diverse Toronto scene, like like the music scene as a whole, for sure, because there's so much music in Toronto, but even within the rock scene, if you will, there's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of scenes within the scenes, right? There is a There is a stoner rock scene in Toronto right now that's flourishing. There's a heavier, sludgy version of that is absolutely coming to life right now. We've
Mm,
got our own death metal bands. We've got a thrash scene. We've got a hardcore and punk scene as well. You guys can kind of fit it with all these things, but these different scenes have not always been open to each other.
mm,
Definitely not always respectful to each other.
yeah.
As a band, like for you guys that are kind of like starting to find your identity and like, around, you can fit with a lot of these players, but you're also kind of like your own unique thing in a way, at least for Toronto. Obviously, there's a couple of bands in this area, Freeways and Ian and whatnot,
Yeah.
that are all kindred spirits. But
Mm.
what's it like for you and for the band to kind of, how do you look at the local scene, if you will? Like where do you see yourself fitting in? Are you seeing very different people at your shows reacting to your music, coming check you out, or is it more a specific crowd? Like what's the experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of the crowds you'd expect at the Bovine Sex Club on a Saturday night, but
Hey,
we do get surprised sometimes at who's coming out to the shows. And yeah, the scene is just like you said, it's really diverse, even just in the rock world.
yeah,
And um, yeah, I mean, we get described as proto-metal, but I would never consider myself a metal band or
right,
tumble a metal band. But we do fit on those bills because we're loud and we're fast, but we do have a certain retro. Just I mean, our approach is just rock and roll, right? So I
right,
think we keep it open ended. It's no mystery where a lot of our influences lie, but we do like to keep it open ended. And I could see this band going in any direction it really wants to.
yeah,
The ethos right now is just loud and tube amps and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
riffs
yeah,
and grooves and all that. But yeah, I don't know. The scene is really diverse, and it's just really awesome to see so many different like styles of musicians coming together and just supporting one another because
yeah,
we all
yeah.
have the same goals in mind, and it's the community is everything.
So, given that we're really at the genesis, kind of, I mean, you've been doing this now for a couple of years, but
Mm,
in the bigger picture, this is very much the beginning of the band.
yes.
So, a question that I would otherwise not really ask other bands, but so why Tumble? What's the story behind that?
The name or the band in itself, or
The name. What's the story that tells us?
well, names are always the hardest. It took a while to come up with Tumble. Really, it came from a song lyric. There's a band called Stray, another
Hmm.
early '70s band. Maiden covered them in the early days. They're an incredible, like, early, UK hard rock band, and who we're lucky enough to be sharing a festival bill with in August over in the UK. But yeah, Stray they had a line in one of their songs, and it sang something. They were singing something about tumbling ground, and it just sounded like earth shattering, and it kind of caught my ear, and then it just and then it just was just like, why not tumble? Why not make it a little more simple? And then it just felt right, and it just stuck,
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was the genesis of the band name.
There you go. There you go. Now you are going to release this EP, and you're going to go on a release tour as well. That is going to keep you extremely busy in June. So, what can we expect from these shows? I mean, I assume that we're going to hear start to finish the entire EP, but
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
Well, we've got an incredible new lineup to show off.
Hmm.
Right, it has been a couple years since we recorded that EP, so we got a new lineup. We got a new drummer in the mix, so we're just excited to debut him. Definitely, you're gonna be hearing the EP played live, and we've got a lot of new songs. And yeah, the creativity is just it's flying right now
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with this new lineup. So there's definitely going to be some new elements to the set. And yeah, we're just super excited. I mean, 3 weeks on the road, going from Windsor all the way to Nova Scotia for the first time. So we're going to be hitting a handful of cities we've never played, and yeah, just expanding just like we want to. So
Yeah. For this material that you say that you're working on now or that you've written, given that we get quite a buffet of styles, if you will, on this EP, were there specific elements on the EP that for you really stuck and that you explored more, or is what's new still very diverse and different?
yeah, I mean, like I said, we're never comparing ourselves to anyone or ourselves, really. We just write, we just play, we jam, and the riffs flow. And I'm sure there's elements you hear in that EP that are going to be on the full length, but there's a lot of other ideas, and the wheels are really churning. And now it's kind of, well, maybe it's not fair to say we don't compare to ourselves, because, there's definitely some ideas we have that weren't included on the EP that we want to make sure we bring into the equation on the next record. So
yeah. The time wasn't right just yet, if you will. Awesome. Well, Liam, you're gonna be extremely busy. You're gonna be so tired in the summer, but I can't wait to see you on hopefully many stages over the next few months. I'm excited for the fans to get the full album. Yes, it looks good, but it sounds good too. And at the end of the day, that might still be the most important thing. And I think you'll get a lot more people paying attention once this is out. Super excited to see you in person soon enough. See you on a stage rocking out, and excited for everything that's coming for Tumble. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks a lot, Jasper. It was a pleasure, man. Thanks for taking the time.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.